Shanti, greetings of peace to each and every one. It's so wonderful to see so many smiling faces, and I invite each of you to put on your video if you like, so we can see. I believe we have people from all around the world. Welcome to our international gathering, honoring wisdom across cultures and generations, a sacred approach to the current call of our time. My name is Masana, and I'm part of the team that has been planning this beautiful retreat. And it's my honor in this moment to introduce our program. However, before I do that, let us take a collective minute of silence, giving ourselves time to really settle, really ground in being present in this moment. Congratulate yourself that you have made the time, the effort, put the energy into being in our beautiful gathering this afternoon. Thank you. And our Embracing Oneness project that started last year. We had our first amazing event last October where we were celebrating both Ubuntu, that knowing I am a person through you, you are through me. So that interconnectedness, and Sankofa, that understanding of bringing back the wisdom from the past, from the ancestors, and bringing what is of value into the present moment. And the team consists of Nina, David, Ella, and Samantha. So I'd like us now to look at the aims and the visions for those of you that weren't with us for the first program, Embracing Oneness. And it's going to come up on the screen. And so our overall aim is to host and accommodate cultural and racial perspectives on oneness in collaboration with individuals and groups already on their unique spiritual paths and who are catalysts for global harmony within their own right. And so honoring that each of you that have shown up are part of this aim and the vision, come together in the spirit of humanity to create a sacred space for meaningful, creative dialogue, for healing individually and collectively. And I'd like now to look at authentic communication. And we're going to use, and if you could put the slide of authentic communication, is being able to create this safe space and building trust with each of us, between us and together. And if we can move on to the next slide. Authentic communication is many aspects of the guidelines that we would like us all to embrace today and use. Speak from your heart. Speak your own truth. Respecting yourself and in turn respecting each other. holding the sacred space, holding those moments of pause, of silence, to allow more wisdom to emerge. Listen to each other with an open heart and an open mind, free from judgment. Confidentiality, we will, in a moment, I will be saying at 3:30, we will be going into small breakout groups. And so it's respecting that whatever anyone shares, to let that be, and only if you share back in the plenary group what is your truth rather than anyone else's. In that way, we continue to engender trust between us. And I'd like now to talk about the program plan for today. So we could see that slide. And in a moment, we're going to have a welcome ceremony with Amajade. And then the highlight of today, we are so happy that Fatima Daiki from South Africa, a renowned storyteller, is going to share 2 stories with us, 2 personal stories. And then later we will be in small breakout rooms, and we've got 12 amazing, very experienced facilitators from different parts of the planet who will support us in small groups to discuss the stories and draw out the spiritual wisdom in them. We will then have a stretch and refreshment break, which Simone will lead us on. And then there'll be a plenary discussion when we all come back together, and David, Nina, and Fatima will lead us on sharing spiritual wisdom, where we can hear from more of you as well. And then finally, honoring wisdom in the journey ahead. And Amajadi will come back, and as a poet, she will also bring together what has been shared during the day and yet be mindful of confidentiality. And we will close with meditation and blessings. So now it is and also Ella. Ella is going to be hosting the chat box. So anytime during the program from this moment on, if you have a question or an insight that you would like to add, please put it in the chat, and Ella will be monitoring it and will also share whatever questions can be raised when we have the plenary discussion at 4:30. So now it is my great pleasure to welcome Amajade Chepnecki. And Amajade is a shamanic celebrant, a poet, musician, we can see the next slide, and an edutainer. So let us now welcome Amajade, who is going to give us a drum call and a libation to bring us all into this wisdom circle. Thank you.
Greetings. Welcome. Honoring wisdom, culture, and generations. Honoring wisdoms, culture, and generations. Honoring wisdom, culture, and generations. ancestors to be with us, your spirit guides to hold us, to all you hold sacred, from where you are and who you stand upon. We say Ashe, honoring wisdom, culture and generations. Honoring wisdom, culture and generations. And we honor you in this space, a safe space created for you to share stories, to reason and dialogue with one another. Honoring wisdom, culture and generations. We honor you. We look forward to hearing your stories. Yes. As we breathe and exhale, the drum sound resonates within us. We look forward to spending the day with each other. Thank you for receiving this opening offering. Ashe ho. Peace. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Amashade. That was beautiful. And I think you've really set the scene for what's going to unfold today. So thank you so much, Amashade. That really was beautiful. And so my name is Samantha, and I'm part of the Embracing Oneness team. And I've been a meditator with the Brahma Kumaris for a while now, and also have a background in education. I spent quite a lot of time in Southern Africa, teaching meditation, and that's where I had the fortune to meet Fatima DK. And so Fatima, very, very warm welcome again. We had many conversations prior to this, just listening to Fatima's stories, and we were not sure if you were going to be here, Fatima, but you are in the flesh, so we are so happy. And so just to give you a little introduction to Fatima, and I think I've known you, Fatima, for I don't know, maybe 15 years or so, since I was in Southern Africa. And Fatima DK is an inspiring storyteller. She's a writer and a playwright from South Africa. She was born in Langa, which is a township in Cape Town, and lives there to this day. She lived during the apartheid system, which is an institutionalized racial segregation system. And many of her stories, the two stories that she's going to share today, is actually from that time period. And one of the stories actually formed the basis for her play called The Glass House. She also runs a theatre group, which she co-founded, assisting young writers and allowing them to realize their dreams. I know now she's busy in the family business. I think lots of stories there too, Fatima. I'm sure you can share that. And so Fatima's first story is going to be entitled Mr. Mum, My Mum and Mr. Rogers. So Fatima, over to you, and a special welcome. And just to say actually that some of the qualities that I've seen in Fatima when I've had interactions with her is that she has this ability to really create a sense of belonging. She's very, very light and a deep sense of wisdom. So that's what we're going to hear from her today. So again, Fatima, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Sam. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great honor for me to be here today. I already feel like an ancestor from all the things that were written on the poster. Anyway, as Sam said, my name is Fatima. My surname is Dike, and I am a Xhosa. And the meaning of the word Dike means a natural pool, not a swimming pool in your backyard, but a natural pool. So anyway, my story is about Mr. Rogers, who was my mother's employee, and my mother, Annie, who was Mr. Rogers's maid, now known as housekeepers. My mother worked for Mr. Rogers for 30 years. And Mr. Rogers was a group of white English-speaking South Africans who lived in the Black Township of Langa, simply because he and all those other white families that lived in Langa, which were about 4 or 6, worked for the city of Cape Town. And their job was to manage the Black Township of Langa. And so my mom was Mr. Rogers's maid. My dad worked for the city of Cape Town under Mr. Rogers. He was a wardsman. And the duty of wardsmen in those days in the townships were to switch on the lights on the streets in the morning, switch them off in the evening. So they used to ride around in bicycles. And then to make sure that people got accommodation, people got houses to live in from the city of Cape Town, and people who were migrants also got places to sleep in the single men's hostels that were built for Black men who were migrant laborers in South Africa. And I come from that background. Both my parents were staunch Methodists. My mother and my father holding high positions in the women's union and the men's union in the church. And so my mother would sometimes have to go and sleep at Mr. Rogers's house when Mr. Rogers and his wife went out in the evenings so that she could look after Mr. Rogers's 2 daughters, Vera and Maureen. And so that was life for us normally. My mom was never at home. She was out there looking after these 2 white kids. And then in 1962, the South African government at that time, which was the National Party, invented a new law called the Group Areas Act. And the Group Areas Act further divided people of South Africa once again, which means all the white people who lived in Langa Township and all the colored people of mixed race who lived in Langa had to move out of Langa so that Langa becomes totally a Black community. And so Mr. Rogers and all the white families moved out of Langa and he went to live in St. James. But over the years, Mr. Rogers kept contact with my mother through Thomas, who was the gardener for Mr. Rogers in those early days. So every Christmas, Mr. Rogers would phone the City of Cape Town office in Langa, ask to speak to Thomas so that he could tell Thomas to tell Annie, his ex-maid, that he will be coming to visit on a certain day, just before the Christmas holidays. And this became a ritual. Mr. Rogers would always come to my house in Langa in December, just before Christmas. And he would bring my mother plants because my mom loved flowers like nobody's business. So he would bring plants. And then when Mr. Rogers came, I noticed in later years, especially in the 70s, because in the 70s, there was the Black consciousness movement in South Africa. And so we became aware of the racial inequalities in South Africa. But every time when it was that time of the year, Mr. Rogers comes to visit my mom would, to me, would adopt the position of the maid again. She would wear her overalls. She would put a starched tablecloth on the table of the house, and she would prepare tea for Mr. Rogers exactly the way she used to do 30 years before. And then when Mr. Rogers arrived, she would run down the little path from the door to the gate, all smiles and happy, master, master. And she would open the gate. Mr. Rogers would come out of his car, open the boot of his car, take out the plants that he brought for my mom, hand them over to my mom over the gate, and the two of them would walk into the house, where my mom would take the plants and put them away, and then she would put the tea and all the other food that she had made for him on the table. She would not dish or make herself a cup of tea. She would just sit on the opposite side of the table and have conversations with Mr. Rogers while he was having his tea. It's in the 70s that I began to notice this relationship and what I saw as inequalities in the relationship. And then my sister married a businessman, and one of his businesses was a butcher shop. So I had to go and work for him at the butcher shop. So it meant that when Mr. Rogers comes in December, my mother would have prepared a super leg of lamb for him while he would bring her the plants. So that there was always this exchange of presents between the two of them. And then after one of those visits, I just asked my mother very quietly, why do you still call him master? Because you don't work for him anymore. My mother stopped and she turned around and roared like a lioness. And she said to me, shut up. There are things you will never understand. And as I shut up, a voice inside me said, you are right. This I will never understand. You don't work for this man anymore, but you still call him master. And then that didn't stop them from meeting every time at Christmas. I had to bring the leg of lamb 2 days before, wrapped in greaseproof paper, brown paper properly, put it in the fridge and let mom know that was the leg of lamb for Mr. Rogers. But then I got worked up by this relationship. So one year, I just decided he's not getting the leg of lamb. So I took the leg of lamb and I chopped it up and I put it in the pot and I cooked it for the family for dinner. That was that. So the day before Mr. Rogers arrives, my mom goes to the fridge to check if her gift for Mr. Rogers is there. And the gift was missing. And of course, I had to bear the brunt of my mother's anger. I had to go to the shop, cut another leg, wrap it up the way she wanted it, bring it home. But the extra punishment now was that I had to write Mr. Rogers on the leg of lamb. which I did. But there was one thing that I used to notice whenever they got together, is that they were having these deep conversations in very soft voices. And as much as I wanted to hear what they were saying, I could never hear what they were saying. And so this fight between my mother and me about Mr. Rogers continued until 1977, when there was the war in the former Rhodesia, which is now known as Zimbabwe, when Mugabe was fighting for the freedom of his country. My mother started a new ritual now. She would come to my house because she now worked for my sister, who was a businesswoman. So she looked after my sister's house and her kids, and she cooked and did everything for both families. But definitely every evening at 7 o'clock, she would come into her house, switch the television on, and stand on her feet and watch the news. And then when the news was over, she would just turn around and walk away. But then one evening, I think she wasn't aware. She was thinking loudly. And as she turned to leave, I heard her saying, God, I wonder if Vera and Maureen are safe. Because Vera and Maureen at that time were married to farmers in Rhodesia. And it was during that period of the war for freedom between Mugabe and the president and that government that was in place in Zimbabwe. Of course, I lost my cool completely. I mean, I'm a member of the Black Consciousness Movement. Here's my mother worrying about two white kids that she brought up, who never had the decency to even write her a letter and say, Dear Annie, don't worry, we are safe. So I just completely lost my cool and I said, why would you worry about two white kids that you brought up that never had the decency to even write you a letter, not to put your heart at ease about what is going on in Zimbabwe? Again, the lioness came out of my mother and she turns around and roars, shut up! There are things you will never understand. At this point, I thought, yeah, the way this story of ours is going, I will never understand. So I thought, let me share my feelings with my sister, the one who is the business lady. I come after her. So we're sitting in the car, we're driving around, we're doing business together. And I said, I don't understand this thing with Mom and Mr. Rogers. Every time when Mr. Rogers comes to visit and bring her gift for Christmas, my mom takes on the position of the maid again. She puts on the starched overall, does all these things, and yet she doesn't work for him anymore. What's going on? My sister said, Fats, my mom and Mr. Rogers have had a relationship for 30 years, which we may not understand. And you just have to be patient and maybe you will understand this relationship. I just felt my sister sold out. Really, she just sold out. Anyway, Mr. Rogers passed away and Thomas, his former gardener, they got a phone call from Mr. Rogers' wife, and Mr. Rogers' wife told Thomas to come and tell Annie that the master had passed away. My mother picks up the phone, calls her daughter Nomahlubi, who has a car. Nomahlubi, Mr. Rogers has passed away. He is being laid to rest on Wednesday. I want you to bring your car around so that Thomas and I can go and bury the master. My sister arrived in her champagne-colored Mercedes-Benz. My mom came out in a best suit. Thomas was also wearing his best suit and his brown hat. And they sat at the back of the Mercedes-Benz. And my sister drove them off to go and bury the master. It took me, I think it took me a lot of time, I think 10, 12 years, before I began to understand my mother's relationship with Mr. Rogers. I met a lady called Sue Clark, who was white. She was a friend of mine. We became very great friends. She's the woman who introduced me to theater. How I became a playwright was through her. I was a poet before I was a playwright. She introduced me to the first Black poets who were published in South Africa. She just taught me so many things, took me to so many places that I wouldn't have personally have been able to go to without her. And so one day we're sitting at the flat just chatting, like friends do. And suddenly she starts talking about something very personal. And then she said, Dickles, that's what she used to call me, Dickles. Dickles, Mafu and I were talking about this very same thing. And that at that moment, I just stopped dead in my tracks. Mrs. Mafu is Sue Clark's maid. And I said, Sue, do you talk about these things with Mrs. Mafu? And she looked at me and laughed as if I was mad. She said to me, of course. I spent the entire day with Mrs. Mafu in my house. So why shouldn't I talk to her? And of course, why shouldn't she talk to her? What came to me at that point in time was how brainwashed the system of apartheid had made me to be, to believe that Black people and white people can never cross that bridge and become friends intimately. And that was what was happening between my mother and Mr. Rogers. Because my mother worked for Mr. Rogers for 30 years. She knew all the family secrets, all the intimate things about that family. So whenever they sat at that table at my mother's house, they would be talking about Vera and Maureen being married in Zimbabwe to these white farmers. They would be talking about personal stuff between the two of them, perhaps about her family and his family. And when that dawned on me, I understood.
Thank you.
Shall I continue?
No, well, we would love, I can hear you the whole day. I'm sure others too, others can as well, but thank you, Fatima. Every time I hear that story, it must be the fourth time. It's always so powerful. And thank you for just sharing your journey with us so honestly and openly. And I think maybe just to take a pause moment, just to really digest what you've shared, Fatima, which has been so powerful. So let's just have a moment just to reflect on that story and what really came up for you. And there are a few questions that you can reflect on if you just put up the next slide in the silence. You may have your own question, but there are 4 questions here and you can choose one, and please write your reflections in the chat box when you're ready to do so. So how did the story make you feel? What inspired you? What values or virtues did you see being played out? And the last question, what did you learn about embracing oneness? when you're ready, you can just jot down a few things in the chat and Ella will facilitate that for us. I can see there's lots of beautiful comments in the chat, and perhaps Stella, you can just pick up a few of those comments that are resonating with you. You can stop the music. Yeah.
So a couple of things have stood out. The first one is from Kay, who says the story made me hopeful and appreciative of oneness. The human connectivity may appear strange to us, but true friendship connects through love and respect. What a beautiful story. Most of them continue in that vibe. It's possible to relearn our deep-rooted beliefs, especially relearning the ones that encourage separation. And that's so true, as we can all see what's going on in the world today. We need to honour each and every interaction we have. And David says every relationship is unique, and we have to be careful reading things into it. And it's true, we can be so easily swayed towards separation rather than oneness. And then this last one from Marina, value and virtue of tolerance and a soul consciousness, seeing the other as a sibling soul. Isn't that beautiful? that we could all be sibling souls. Love that.
Thank you, Ella, for facilitating that. And thank you to everyone that wrote in the chat and so many beautiful comments. We're going to hear a second story from Fatima now. If we just bring up that slide. And this second story is quite graphic. And as you know, apartheid was a very difficult, not just a difficult time, a very violent time. And so Fatima shares a story which may cause a little bit of discomfort, but I'm just going to encourage you just to hold the space for each other, but especially for Fatima, because I think when you tell a story, it's very easy to kind of feel those things once again, to relive it. And so just to really be compassionate as you tune in, but also to hold the space for each other, because it may also trigger things in our own stories. And so Fatima, the second story, Race Divides Us. So over to you, Fatima.
Thank you, Sam. In 1976, the youth of South Africa decided that they'd had enough of the system of separate development. And so the students from Morrison Isaacson High School on the 16th of June left school early in the morning and started marching through the streets of Soweto, carrying banners that said they did not want to be taught in the language of the oppressor. They did not want this education, which was specifically made for Black people. And so one of the biggest revolutions happened in our time in 1976. And then a month later, on the 11th of August, 1976, I am now working as a playwright at the Space Theatre. I've just written my first play called The Sacrifice of Kheli, which was based on the 9th Frontier War between the British and the Xhosas. And it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm just about to have my breakfast and I hear this music filling the entire township of Langa. Could just like, it was like a choir made up of 1,000 voices. And suddenly I stop and I think, what's going on? Most of the people in the township have gone to work. All the kids are supposed to be in school. Who could be singing on the streets at this time of the morning and why? So I go out of the house and I stand on my veranda and I look up and down my street, but I don't see anything, but I can still hear the music. So I run down my street to the main road and I stop. I look left, I look right, and there they were. The students from Langa High School were marching in fours, and they were all dressed in full school uniform. And they had these big white banners at intervals, which were written, "We do not want to be taught in the language of the oppressor." And the next one would say, "Down with Afrikaans." Now, if you don't understand the word Afrikaans, Afrikaans is a mixture of Dutch and other languages that was created after the Dutch settlers came to the Cape. And the government of the time was trying to get all the Black schools to be taught through this language, which made things even more difficult for the Black kids who were in schools. I stop. And as I watch these kids marching down the main street of Langa, Washington Street, with such dignity, I feel ashamed because I went through my entire schooling doing certain subjects, not all of them, but certain subjects in Afrikaans as the government was introducing them. And here, right here in front of me, in 1976, young children in high school were saying, stop, that's enough. And as I was still admiring the courage of these young people, suddenly the entire street was flooded with police vans driving up and down the march, making U-turns and coming back. And I was getting the feeling that they were trying to make the students nervous, but the kids were not nervous at all. They just maintained their dignity and continued to march. They were singing a song, but this was not a song, it was a hymn that had been turned into a song of protest. And the lyrics were sung in Xhosa, but what they meant, what they were saying, the lyrics were saying, what have we done? What have we done? Our sin is our blackness. And I'm standing there and I'm totally blown by the courage that these children had to do what they were doing at that time in South Africa. And then suddenly the mood changed. The police came out. They started taking pictures of each and every student who was in the march as they were marching past. And then at intervals, they would just go to the march, grab 3-4 kids, throw them into the police van, and drive them off to the police station to lock them up for no reason, because the kids had not committed any violence. They were just expressing their emotions and their feelings. And I'm still standing there in awe, just like even what the system was doing was not able to shake these kids. These kids were focused on what they were doing. They were not going to be violent. They will let the police be violent, but they were not prepared to be violent. And then when they reached the police station, they went across the road, and next to the Methodist church, there's an open field there. And they gathered around the leaders of the march, and they had a talk. And then they all marched across the street to the police station. When the police saw them coming, they locked all the gates. And suddenly, there were 8 or 10 policemen armed inside the police station yard. And so the kids approached the policemen at the gate. They allowed their leaders to talk to the policemen. And the police and the children, the students, asked the policemen that what had happened to the students that they were taking from the march, that they put into their vans and they brought them to the police station. Were they arrested or not? Because if they were arrested, could the policemen give the students a date to appear in court and release them straight away? The police did not like to hear these children telling them what to do. And then suddenly, out came the tear gas bombs. And they were shooting tear gas bombs at these kids. And the kids dispersed and ran across the road. When the tear gas bombing had stopped, the kids went back to the gate, and every single one of them was carrying a white handkerchief. When they got to the gate, they allowed their leaders again to ask the policemen to give them permission, just the leaders, to go inside the police station to talk to the station commander and find out whether those young people that were picked up during the march, were they arrested or not. Again, the tear gas bombs came out and they started shooting at the kids, and the kids dispersed. When the kids went back to the gate, my attention was removed from what was happening in the gate, because there was a young boy, about 15 years old, who did not go to the gate, but went to the side of the police station fence where there was a black policeman standing there. He said something. He started talking to the black policeman through the fence. I don't know what he said because I couldn't hear. But whatever the young boy said to the black policeman made the black policeman so angry that he came out of the police yard, chased the boy, grabbed him by his school blazer. But the boy just shrugged himself out of the school blazer. And the policeman was standing there holding the school blazer. And we started laughing. There were about 500 of us watching this whole scene. We started to laugh. It was a joke. So the policeman went back into the yard with the young man's school blazer. But this time, the tear gas bombs were accompanied by bird shot. So they were shooting these bird shots at these kids, trying to chase them away. And the kids would run away, but they would come back. And the young 15-year-old went back to the black policeman on the side of the fence. Once again, he started talking to the black policeman. I don't know what he was saying. Again, the black policeman got angry, came out of the gate, chased him, grabbed him by his school shirt, but he shrugged himself out of his school shirt, and the policeman was left holding the school shirt. We laughed again. It was a joke. The policeman went back into the police station yard, locked the gate. When the third wave of students went back to the gate to talk to the policeman, and the 15-year-old went back to the black policeman behind the fence, the black policeman pulled out his service gun. And when the boy saw the gun, he turned around and started to run, and the policeman shot him through the back of his head. I saw his brains flying in that blue sky, and he was still running. But as he put his foot on the pavement on the other side of the road, life went out of him, and his body fell back onto the street. At that point, there was pin drop silence. The 500 people from the community could not believe what they were seeing. There was just silence. And then a minute later, people were screaming. People were yelling insults at the police. People were going mad. People were looking for rocks to throw at the stones, at the police. It was just chaos. And then suddenly, I heard the policemen preparing their guns to shoot. And the people stopped. The teachers from Langa High School walked over to the dead body to pick it up. At that point, somebody in the police station yard had a loud hailer, and he began to yell through the loud hailer, "Do not touch that body. It is government property." They had arrested the 15-year-old in death. He was dead, but they arrested him. The pain, the anger, the hopelessness of the situation. I remember I was crying, but my tears were evaporating in my eyes because of the anger. I was boiling with anger. The first thought that came to my mind was that man could have a 15-year-old son. Where was his mercy? That was a child. He could have spoken to that boy as he would be speaking to his son, but he shot him. As I turned around to walk back home, I told myself that we will never be free because they are armed and we are unarmed. I had to go to work that evening at the Space Theatre. I could not go. I went to work the following morning. I was still angry. I think anger is a mild word. So I walked into work. Everybody in the theater is my friend, black, white, colored, Indian, are all one family. But that day, when I saw my white friends, I did not want to speak to them. I said some very rude words to them because I was venting that anger that came from their system that kills our children. And I was venting my anger on my white friends. I got home that evening and I sat and I reflected on my actions at work. I wasn't happy at all because those white people who I call my friends, there was something in them that resonated with me that made me want to be friends with them. Those people in that theater did not give those policemen the guns. They did not pull the trigger. I was wrong. I was wrong. So I went back to work and I apologized to each and every white friend of mine that day. And I told them what had happened and that what I saw really hit me so hard that I forgot that I am a human being and that you are also human beings. I apologized. And people understood because we all lived under the same climate of racism in South Africa. Sorry, I'm going to stop here.
Thank you, Fatima. And I think if we can just take a moment of silence just to hold the space for Fatima, she almost relives that again, and also for each other. It's a very emotive experience. Thank you, Fatima, for really just being so open with all of us today. Fatima, I just want to say once again, thank you for your courage and just being such an example of authenticity and openness. Those stories are very, very inspiring, and really, I think it's such a good basis for our discussion today. So thanks again, Fats.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone.
Big hug.
Thank you, Sam.
We'll
Thank
hug.
you.
Can we all just embrace her? Can you see us? Go to gallery view. We're just all holding you, Fats, because that's really touched our hearts. So we're just holding you.
Thanks.
You feel that?
Yes.
Nice,
Thank you,
Linda.
Sam. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Fatima, thank you so much for that story. It I think touched all of us in our hearts and minds, and made us think about these particular situations, and where do we turn our energy in terms of our own situation, or looking externally to try and change other things. And I think that's a very wise stance to look inside, and how we can, a very mature and wise stance of looking inside at these things and what we can learn from them. So thank you so much for that. I know everyone probably wants to hear more from Fatima, and we will have some time for some questions later and some discussion, but we wanted to take some time now to go into to small groups and have some deeper reflection on both of the stories that were introduced. So maybe if we can go to the slides. I'll just mention that both of these stories, I think, were powerful ones in different ways. And we're going to spend a little time, first of all, talking about my mom and Mr. Rogers. And people already shared some comments in the chat box about that. And then maybe spend a little bit more time on this very powerful story of race divides us, and what we're able to, what wisdom, what thoughts we're able to draw out of that experience. So if we go to the next slide, we just want to mention that these small groups will be 4 to 6 people. We're just checking on the numbers now, but there will be someone who will be a facilitator in each group. And you will be asked, a message will come up on your screen. Do you want to join the group? And we hope that you'll do that. So you'll have an opportunity in the small group to share your feelings and your thoughts, and what learnings came out for you from the discussion. But also, if you choose not to go to a small group, you can stay in the plenary. There'll be space. There'll be some music playing. You can offer comments in the chat box if you desire. Ella, who we introduced earlier, will be there to monitor that space. And in about 50 minutes, an hour, we'll come back again for that further discussion with Fats and others. So if we go to the next slide, we just wanted to remind people of this sense of authentic communication, and some of the guidelines on the next slide that we've developed for that. To speak from your heart, speak your truth. And I think Fatima was a very, very good example of doing that. And she showed in her stories, you know, that respect for herself and respect for others, something that was deeply shown in those stories. But when we're together in these small groups, to hold that sacred space together, we're all on on different learning journeys. We're all at different places in that journey, so may have reacted or learned from the story in different ways. But it's a sacred learning space for all of us. So to hold that space. And as Masana mentioned earlier, you know, to listen to each other with an open heart and an open mind, to realize we're at these different places in our journey, and to trust that everyone has the strength and the knowledge and the ability to make the choices and move forward on that journey on themselves. And we can bear witness and listen to their sharing, and share our own perspective and our own learning as well. But we ask that the discussions that happen in the small rooms, we keep confidential, and we can share some of the highlights, but not any of the personal items that come up in those small groups. So we can go to the next slide. I think this is just a holding slide for you all to start thinking about these questions. You may want to take, if you have your phone handy, to take a picture of this slide with the questions. And the questions will be posted in the chat box for everyone to look at. How did each story make you feel? What inspired you or what challenged you in each story? And then what values or virtues did you observe? Did you see maybe different people exhibiting in the story? We saw so much from Fatima herself and the kind of virtues that she expressed, but from the other people in the story as well. What were they expressing? And then we're going to move towards this question of how can each story inform us in our efforts to embrace oneness. So that's the final question we'll ask people to look at. And we're just organizing the groups now, and people are going to get that little message to join a group, and we'll then have some time in those groups to discuss these questions. So we'll just leave you to reflect, and very soon you'll be asked to join a group and to move into.
That was so wonderful, all that rich sharing. I believe that it's my time to speak. I'm not sure if I'm speaking to myself or if you can all hear me. If you can hear me, just do a very wonderful, holistic salute. Salute. Om Shanti.
It's all good, Simone. It's all good.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Let's just raise the vibrations with a salute. Thank you in oneness. So I believe that I'm just going to take you on kind of like a virtual stretch. So if you just, let me move this here. Amazing, amazing. So if we can just literally just start to just get up wherever you are. You can just start to just roll your shoulders, get yourself in a very good space. And Mr. DJ, let's go. Amazing. So come on, guys. Just start to push out. Just see the lights. You're just going to start literally throwing, start out. So look at my shoulders, rolling back and forward. Yes, push, push. And then we're going to start to do the little baby jiggle. So we're just going to go, just like the babies on the screen. it now. We're warmed up. Let's change the tempo a little bit.
Jerusalem, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalem, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze uyami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze Jerusalem, ikayalami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Jerusalem, ikayalami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze Dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami
Give yourselves a round of applause. Well done, guys. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Thank you.
Nice, Simone.
Fantastic.
You're most welcome.
Om Shanti, everyone. Simone, thank you for that. Certainly forced us all to shift our energy, which I think is a important spiritual skill. So thank you for sharing your gift with us. And I think we've already given thanks for Fatima to the sharing of her stories. But if we can share the screen again, and maybe if people want to set their view on side by side, we can see these last couple of quotes that were up. Yeah, Manish, this one is from Daddy Janky. Just for people to think about this in the context of the conversations we've been having. And then if we go to the next one. This is by a Sikh activist from the USA, a woman who's a Sikh, who's had this very influential book, See No Stranger, that's come out in the last year or so. And she talks about revolutionary love and the importance of love as something we need to share at this time that's so important. So we just wanted to share those as we move into our next session, if we can go to the next slide. And this is an opportunity to share some of the spiritual wisdom that may have been inspired or generated from our discussions today. And Nina, who I think many of you know, Nina Buchanan, who was dancing, I'm sure, the last few minutes with Simone, has joined to be part of the facilitation of this little session. And what we're going to do, first of all, Nina, do you want to say hello? Do you want to add anything? And you're still muted. Nina, you're still muted. There you are.
I want to say that I'm really enjoying this afternoon's session.
every single segment has been really very fresh, beautiful, and nothing I'd imagined that I'd be experiencing. So thank you all for those who have shared so far. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
So thanks, Nita. I'm not entirely sure. You might be able to help me here how many breakout groups we had, but I think there were 10 or so breakout.
There were about between 9 and 10 breakout groups.
9 and 10.
Yes.
So we're going to hear back for those groups just to begin the conversation. And then Fatima is going to join us, and we're going to have some interaction with her in a few minutes.
Yes.
But to share back from the breakout groups, we're trying something called a jam board.
When we have a strong belief in positive change to occur, anything can happen. When we have a strong belief, because it's the belief that really is the bridge that takes us to our destination. So Fatima, I've got a few questions here that I'd like to ask you in order to start this conversation. But I want people to understand that the conversation is not just between you and I, because I'd like people to really dialogue with you as much as possible through the chats, or if they want to say something to you directly, I'd like them to really, make that request to do that. So it's a conversation that is being had. It's not by all, it's not just between you and I, or between you, myself, and David. So the first question is, Fatima, what is it that resonated with you? What resonated with you from what you see here? What resonated with you from what you see here now? I've got some more questions, but perhaps you might like to think about it and respond.
I just want to see if I'm not muted.
You're not muted.
Yes.
I can hear you
Yes.
clearly.
Thank you. I come from a culture of Ubuntu. And in my culture, when I say to you, Ungumtu, when I say to you, I a human being, it is regardless of your skin color. It is the qualities that I see in you. Because honestly speaking, Ubuntu is virtue. So what I'm seeing here at this moment is a gathering of people who are thirsty for truth. And the truth is that we are not the color of our skins. We're something much more than that. If we were the color of our skins, we would be limited. So right now I'm in a company where, in the company of people I feel who think like me. Abantu, human beings.
Yes. And Ubuntu is very much about those qualities and virtues that we have deep inside of us, that when we use those qualities and virtues, there is togetherness, there is oneness, isn't it? Which is really what this project is about. It's about oneness. It's about reaching that understanding that we are beyond our physical makeup. We are beyond the skin, our skin color. We are even beyond the blood that runs through our veins. It is something greater than that, that causes the blood to run through our veins, that makes us Ubuntu.
Abantu.
That makes us?
Makes us Abantu, human.
Human.
Yes.
So there's a lot for us to learn at this side of the ocean from, people like you, because yes, you are bringing something up to us that's very new and something that we can relate to in terms of understanding the true nature of our non-physical self. So thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
There's a question in the chat. I don't know if
There's
you're
a
looking.
question in the chat. Okay.
Shall I read it out?
Yes,
Can you
please.
see it?
Thank you.
Okay,
That
so
would be very helpful.
the question says, can Fatima talk about the transformation that takes place in the heart when you forgive someone who has wronged you? Does forgiveness set you free? It's from Philippa.
Wow.
A nice question.
I'm laughing because one of the lessons that Tatu Mandela, Nelson Mandela taught us, first lesson he taught us was about forgiveness. And the first thing he said to us is that if you go around carrying something negative that someone has done to you, you are in prison. Even though he was in prison for 27 years, he was not imprisoned because he came to understand the people who had locked him up. And by understanding them, that set him free. So from my personal perspective, if someone I love, and I'll talk about people who are close to me, my family, my children, if they do something wrong, because I have that love for them, I am able to forgive easily.
Yes, yes. And Fatima, did you want to say something else?
Yes.
Go on.
So it's something that I was learning as a child growing up. When you have, we have those fights as children in the family. This one always irritates me. And you go and tell mom, this one is always on my case. And mom, just the same smile that you have on your face now, that's my mom's smile. And then my mom would say, man, accommodate that person.
Ah.
So in my language, in isiXhosa, she would say to me, mbonele. In other words, see inside the selfishness or whatever, that negativity, okay? See inside that negativity and you will be free.
Wonderful, wonderful. And something you said just a few moments ago, you talked about the prison that we put ourselves in. And yes, it reminds me that when we do that, we're holding ourselves to ransom, but we're not just holding ourselves to ransom, we're holding the other person to ransom. So we're both kind of tied up, constricted, yes, and not free. So it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And there's somebody, there's a message that there's something on the chat says that Nelson Mandela also said, if we learn to love, if we learn to hate, we can learn to love. But my question is, love is Ubuntu. And correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please. Love is Ubuntu. Is it something we learn, Fatima, or is it something that we have inside of us?
We know that love is in us. It's natural. We're born with it. So it's not something that you learn. We learn to hate. We learn all the other negative things. Because the positive things, as our parents would say, we sucked them from our mother's breasts. Yes. And at the same time, we also do the same thing with the negative things. We learn negativity from other people. Yeah. But we are love. If you look at a little child has everything. Love, you can scold them now, they'll go away and cry in the corner. 4 minutes later, they're back. Okay? So it's not something that the child has learned. It's something that's in the child itself. It is what we call ubuntu bakhe, hey humanity.
It's a beautiful language. In fact, it's quite rhythmic, that language, actually. Yeah.
Can I
Actually,
say something quickly? Can I
yes,
say something
yes,
quickly?
of course,
It
indeed.
doesn't have anything to do with this, because in the Xhosa language, we use
Yes.
parts of our tongues that many other languages don't. So in the English alphabet, we have the X. And in isiXhosa, that X is that sound that I just made now. So we make phrases as children because we used to play outside when it was raining and we'd hear the frogs, having conversations. And so what we heard as children with those frogs having conversations in the water, the frogs used to say, nazo ingxoxo ziyaxoxwa kwezo ngxangxasi ngamaxoxo.
Lovely.
So even the frogs have meetings in the swamps. And then you take the Q in the English alphabet. That's a
Lovely.
click.
Lovely.
So we made up a phrase also that goes like this: Iqaqa liziqeqaqeqa kuqaqaqa, liqhau kuqhoqhoqo, which simply means that the skunk wriggles in the ground and cuts its throat.
That's another story, isn't it?
Let's
That's
leave it
another
there.
beautiful story. Actually, Fatima, I think you should save some of those stories because we're going to have you back, right?
Oh my goodness.
Actually, I am talking to you and I think other questions are coming through and I'm not paying attention to them. So whoever can read a question for Fatima, I'm very happy for you to do that so that we can...
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, thank you, Ella.
Nina. They came from earlier on.
Yes.
In the first video session and then the
no problem.
second video session. But I think they're really quite illuminating, to say the least. So the first one was, what made Annie roar? What was she trying to protect or defend? Your response.
Yes. In the late 50s and late 50s and 60s in South Africa, there was racial segregation. So there was even a law that was against people of different races being partners or having a love affair. And this is something that I realized later after my mom died. Why every time when I would raise this topic about Mr. Rogers, she would roar like a lioness and say, shut up, there are things you will never understand. That phrase still sits in my mind and I still remember saying, I will never understand her. But later on, I realized that Mr. Rogers was a white man who was retired. They had a relationship between maid and master because my mother was part of that family. And so when the relationship spills over into the outside, where Mr. Rogers comes to my house and brings my mom gifts and has tea at my house, my mother was politically afraid. So she was trying to save that relationship. So that's why she never answered me. Okay.
Thank you so much. The person who asked that, I don't think is any longer on the chat, but there was also a question earlier from Philippa. Philippa, I don't know if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question about the relationship with Fatima's mother after understanding the relationship she had with Mr. Rogers. Would you like me to ask the question or would you like to unmute yourself and ask? Okay, so Fatima, the question from Philippa is, how did your relationship change with your mother after understanding the relationship that she had with Mr. Rogers?
I only understood the relationship after my mom died. But my mother and I, that don't know what to call it, that my not understanding her relationship, which, oh yeah, no. I remember I asked my sister, okay, because one day my mom told us to drive to a certain street in Langa, and she told my sister to stop the car. And then she said to me, do you see this house? I said, yes. And she said, this was the very first house that I owned when I lived in Langa. Mr. Rogers gave it to me. And I was like, so what? He works for the city of Cape Town, so he can get you a house anytime when you want it. So when I spoke to my sister about this, she said to me, but Fatima, you have to understand, all the other people in this community struggled to get a house, but Mr. Rogers chose to give her a house without her having to wait in lines or queues to get the house. I still did not understand the importance of that. But
So-
then after my mother died, when I had white friends, then I realized that the friendship between my mother and Mr. Rogers was genuine, and she would do anything to protect it. In the same way that my relationship with Sue Clark, who was my first white friend, meant a lot to me, and I was prepared to defend it.
Thank you, Fatima. And so what about the relationship with your mother? It's clear that you had this understanding about her relationship with Mr. Rogers. How did it impact your relationship with your mother while she was here and now she's moved on and transitioned?
It never changed anything, you know. It's something that we spoke about, we disagreed, and that was it. It didn't create a dent in our relationship.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so illuminated, because I think many people would think that that would have quite a negative impact. So thank you, appreciate that. The other question coming in is, where do you find the strength and fortitude to restore, heal, and to make whole in you what the world continuously attempts to divide?
This question.
And that's from Nick Haddadi. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. That's a
Yes, it is.
really great question.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Nick.
Nice question.
What?
So where did you find the strength and fortitude to restore, to heal, and to make whole in yourself?
Yes.
What the world continuously attempts to divide. You know, you had to really create
Yes.
your own story.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I lived in a very powerful community in Langa. So I had examples in front of me. My mother was one of them. She was a very, very strong woman. She believed in God in such a deep way. And I learned a lot of things from my mother, a lot. But then again, within the community, there was a specific a lady or woman or mother who was in, I don't want to say she was in politics, but she was also fighting for the rights of people. And she was just an ordinary mother, very, very ordinary. But every time something came up, she would be the first person to step up, step outside, and go to all the people in the neighborhood. I remember there was a potato boycott because the farmers were killing the black potato workers and burying them on their farms. And so she steps out of her house dressed in a sack dress, straight sack dress made from sacks, and she had a necklace made from raw potatoes. She knocks on my mother's house door, and they would always greet each other with their clan names. They would never call each other by their given names, always the clan name. And so my mother was laughing at her and saying, is this the latest fashion? You know, the way she was dressed. And then she said to my mother, calling my mother by her clan name, sit down. And then she sat down and then she explained, you know, why she was wearing the costume and that there's going to be a potato boycott. We are not going to eat potatoes. I am going to go from house to house to house, explaining this to everybody, because the next time when I come, I will go into your kitchen, do something very un-African, open your pot, and if you've cooked potatoes, I will spill your pot outside. So but they were fighting for something, but at the same time, there was so much respect they were giving to one another, you know, when they went from door to door explaining. So we were learning also from these elders in our community. And so you felt that you couldn't give up. I mean, I watched the children in 1976. They didn't give up. So you're always bombarded by these energies from outside, which also bring out your power, your powerfulness. And so for me, if I'm hit by the system, I will brush myself, get up, and go and do something else. And what really, really helped me was the ability to be able to write plays about these things and put them on stage.
Yes,
That
yes,
helped me a lot.
yes. So Fatima, there are lots of comments and questions, and one of them, it's really just a statement, and I think you need to hear this. We had the privilege of having Fatima in our group. Forgiveness stops the negative karmic cycles. And one just and if you want to comment on that, it would be good. But there is one other question where someone asked, how did, you know, all that unfolding of understanding your mother, how did that change your relationship with her?
I beg your pardon?
With your mom, how did that change your relationship with her? For example, I remembered when my relationship with my mother changed in an amazing way. I found out something about her that I felt so admirable about, and it was like I was in awe, and it just left me stunned for a long time that I did not know her. I didn't know. So how did that change your relationship with mom?
What I learned from those clashes with her was that my mother, if my mother was your friend, she was your friend for life.
Yes.
Disregardless. Okay. Exactly. She was your friend for life.
Yes.
But also, you know, my father died when I was 7 years old. And I've watched my mother bringing us up alone. And we've never gone to bed without food in our mouths. We always had clothes, even if they were not expensive. We went to school. You know, my mother did everything to make sure that we never felt that we did not have a father. And it only takes a very powerful woman. And I'm not saying other women are not powerful, but I feel our mothers, you know, are the powers, you know, the backbones of our society. Because most mothers live long after their husbands are gone, and their job is always to keep the family together. And I've seen my mother going to see my brother in prison on a Sunday when there was no transport to get there. And I remember my sister saying, but why are you wasting your time? This guy doesn't listen to you. It's a Sunday, there's no transport. My mother just hummed that little hymn that she always hummed, you know, under her breath. And she put her hands on her back and she walked out of that house, went to the bus stop, because that day she was determined to go and see her son in prison. So I had a very powerful mother as an example in my life. So those little clashes between us were treated like childlike, you know, things that she would, you know, roar at me. I would shut up, and that's the end of the scene. Let's go to scene 2. It wasn't something that lingered and spoiled our relationship.
Yes, thank you. The second story was, I think a lot of us found it really difficult. And there's one question here, which is saying, how did you feel about the fact that the policeman who killed the boy,
A young boy.
was black? How did you feel about that? So, you know, we deal with it at different levels depending on how we can, really, isn't it? How did you feel about the fact that the policeman was black?
I lost hope in mankind. Totally. I lost hope in mankind. But later on, when I stepped out of my box, he was a black policeman working for a white system, really. What choices did he have? He did have a choice, because that boy did not throw a stone. He asked him a question that annoyed him. But then, to me, the question was, what happened to his Ubuntu at that point in time, that he picked up that gun and shot a 15-year-old? And I could not find the answer for that. And that's where I lost hope in humanity.
Yes, and this is what happens in situations like that. We lose our Ubuntu. You know, I think I heard you sharing in the recording that some of us, we eat our Ubuntu.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes. Actually, this is really lovely. Someone is asking you, will you write a book around this in the future, or is there a book already?
Yes, good question.
This is a generational story, so inspirational to pass on about relationships in all its color and volume. Food for thought? I think what I'd like to do now is I'd like to really open up for David to come in, and, you know, you may want to interject here, David, and say something. Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting to hear Fatima tell us about the book. When is the book coming?
When is the book
coming?
I wrote a play called Glass House about the 1976 students' revolution. And in the play, it's the daughter of the maid and the daughter of the master, who are friends because they grew up together with the mother, the black girl's mother, bringing her to work most of the times, and the kids getting to know one another. And in my story, the white father is killed by black people in the township. And then the two young people have to deal with that. Because there was a story where a white pharmacist who worked in the government clinic in one of the black townships in Guguletu, when the student uprising started in 1976 in August, and they were told to go home. So as he was driving out of Langa, he was stoned to death in his car. And that's where the idea came from. Where now it's the white girl who kicks the black girl out of her home, demolishing, destroying that friendship that was built over the years. And it's the black girl having to carry the guilt of her people.
Wow, so much we can learn from you, Fatima. We want to just sit at your feet and hear more and more of these stories. They're truly inspiring. Thank you so much. There's lots of other questions in the chat box, but I don't think we're going to be able to get to them today.
Okay.
We did want to just ask people before they leave to try to take all of this in, to think about what Fatima has shared from her stories, and what you've heard from other people in the questions they ask, in the reflections they've had, in the comments that people have made throughout. Just to think about what wisdom are you taking forward for healing as a result of this 2 or 3 hours we spent together? What wisdom are you taking forward for healing, celebrating, and guiding your own life, and to support others and your community as a whole? So maybe, Manesh, if we could go to that slide, it's slide number 31, just so people can see that question. And we'll just leave people to think about that question for a moment. And then we'll move into our wrap up. We have a few things to wrap up, and a big, more formal thank you we want to give to Fatima as well. But here's the question we want to leave you with. What wisdom are you taking forward for healing, celebrating, and guiding your own life, and to support others and your community as a whole? So take a moment to think of that, and then I'll turn it over to Masana for our final session.
David, I need to introduce Amma.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, so just to say again, just from me personally, thank you, David. Thank you, Fatima, for your sharings, beautiful and really memorable information. And what we're now going to do is we're going to go into another segment. We heard Amajade's beautiful drum call at the start of today's session. And now, as we are fast approaching the closure of the session, we're again about to hear Amma's dub poetry, which is a kind of a spontaneous narrative of her insights into the experience we've shared in the last 3.5 hours. So thank you, Amma, and welcome again.
Oh, always a pleasure, always such a joy. What a day, what a journey. Wow, what can I say? I'm glad I'm a writer at this point, because there's just so much that needed to come out and express itself. So how long have I got, Nina? How long can I?
Maximum 10 minutes.
Oh, lovely. Wow. Let's share some time. Let's share some time. A born to a man do. A born to a man do. A born to a man do. Hearing our stories. Today, we've greeted one another warmly, embracing oneness of the highest level. Together, we tapped into our roots. We grounded ourselves in the earth, spreading our roots in oneness. A born to a man do. A born to a man do, a born to a man do, hearing our stories. I invite you all to join in with me. We've heard this word Ubuntu, the oneness, Amandu, the humanness that we all are. So when you hear it, Ubuntu, what do you say? Amandu, put your hands up. Yes, let me feel you. Because this is about you. This is all for you. There may be hindrances and technical challenges, political policies, or religious disparities. Yet we honor wisdom, culture, and generations. And although there is pain in our stories, we can hold each other, comfort one another with protective, soft voices, sharing our stories, bearing our stories, recognizing the stories we're conditioned in, releasing the stories we've grown out of, revealing the stories of illusion. Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, hearing our stories. Through hearing each other and the stories from Fatima, we hear how the youth hold the stories of the future. Uplifting our young makes us stronger. Truth in action has no words, yet speaks its truth in all languages, honoring the youth who stand up for truth, honoring forgiveness that leads us and heals us. Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, honoring stories. So freedom is another word we can't really utter. Freedom has to be lived and focused on. We sit in our oneness, held by courage, held by integrity, speaking from our hearts, speaking through our truth, listening with open hearts, open minds. Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, hearing our stories. And through our families, we create living stories. We sit in the lap of opportunities to grow where we've planted and reap our unique fruits of our life's journeys. Let's use our clan names and call this land by its rightful names. Oneness is the roots of our humane family, pre-religion, pre-industry, oneness and collective commonality. Hey, Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, Ubuntu, Amandu, hearing our stories, honoring wisdoms, cultures and communities. This produces a revolutionary love. And to revolve is to come round again, Move in a circle and have a central access. Stand in the center of our powers. So here's our revolutionary love. And thank you for joining us in this revolutionary love. It's an evolutionary love, a solution for love. And the liquid of love can be tears. The emotion of love can be forgiveness. The salve of love to lovingly detach at times and hold the vision of oneness. So let wisdom surround you and let it honor you. All cultures and all communities. Hey, a born to a man do, a born to a man do, a born to a man do, hearing our stories. What can I say? Pure love, pure love. I just really want to take a moment just to breathe with you all. It's been a challenging day. Thank you so much for all that's been offered, so that's been shared. It's been a joy just to be here, to be present with you all. Breathe and know that wherever you are in the world, we breathe together. Ashe, Ho, Amashade.
Tamago.
Ashe.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fatima. It's just been a pleasure, an awesome pleasure being with you and hearing those stories today. Love and respect.
Thanks to you too. Just to see the joy on your face when you say your poetry and you sing your songs, just gives us joy, all of us. So you are spreading Ubuntu through this screen. Thank you so much.
Don't start me singing again.
Amashade, thank you so much. Can I just remind everyone before we go on to the next stage that we'd like you, if you can, to hold tight and be with us until 5:45 when the programme will officially end. We have some more information to pass on to you, and we shall do that at that time. So following on from Amashade, it's really now my opportunity to have a grounding exercise with you, with a guiding experience. So if you'd like to stay in your seats, but if you can sit up quite upright and just ensure that both of your feet are firmly on the ground. And then I'd like you to take a deep breath all the way down from your belly button and all the way up, and exhale through your mouth. And as you take the second breath, place your hand on your heart. We've been speaking so much today about authentic communication. And as everybody knows, true peace starts with the individual. It starts with ourselves making peace with who we truly are and reconnecting to that. And so the final deep breath. And as you exhale, you can let your hand drop to your side. As you're breathing gently, please be ever so kind with yourself, be kind with your heart, and allow yourself to soften in the seat where you are. Remember, we are all having a unique human experience, but indeed we are siblings of the soul. So breathing gently, just imagine from the top of your head, you're feeling much lighter. You can feel your forehead softening. And as your forehead softens, you realise your eyes are also softening too. You allow yourself to reflect on the day and take with you the words of wisdom, words of inspiration into the next stage of this program and into your life, into your communities. We allow ourselves to see from our own personal perspective the transmutation that we can make personally. Then allow your nose to wiggle slightly and allow your top lip to soften and let your jaw drop. Notice how relaxing that feels. As you feel the relaxation falling out of your jaw through to the front of your neck and then down to the back of your neck, all the way down to the base of your spine. Take another deep breath and relax. Just allow your body to soften. And notice now when you come to your heart area. For some of you, you may want to experience the colour green. This indeed has been the colour we've used in most of our marketing. This also signifies new beginnings, new opportunities, and a new wisdom we can individually take into the world. Allow that feeling of love to expand. You may at this point wish to remember a time when you felt deeply loved, treasured and adored. You may wish to remember a time with a loved one who cared deeply for you as a caregiver. Allowing this feeling of love to permeate through the rest of your body. As it moves all the way down your arms, down across your thighs, you may want to pay a little attention to your knees, and taking us all the way down into your calves and your feet. And notice how relaxed you feel as you wiggle your toes a little bit and feel the grounding into the green of Mother Earth. Connecting with nature allows us to transmute the stresses and strains of a sometimes unforgiving world. This is the process by which we can give back to ourselves and take this powerful energy, take these good vibes, make sure you've filled up your cup, and share this with the rest of the world. In the next few minutes, I'd like you to look around you and notice if there's anything else that you can see that is the colour green, or whatever shade that might be. As you notice what else might be around you that may be the colour green, if you can think about what else might be possible for personal healing and sharing the wisdom of our ancestors with the world. Ashe.
Thank you, Ella, for that very powerful, deep, healing guidance into our inner heart and then connecting. And I could really sense the vibration from each radiating out collectively, brings such hope and oneness for the whole of humanity. It is now my great privilege to offer a blessing directly to Fatima on behalf of all of us. So if we could have the slide on the wisdom cards. And Fatima, as the arrow moves around, could you say stop? And this will be your special blessing card. So Fatima, I can't see. Can you mute and choose a wisdom card?
It's going fast. There's
Yes.
a card that I like.
That one? This one?
The one at the bottom left.
At the bottom. Okay. It looks like this. Oh, it's gone again. Bottom.
Yeah.
Bottom where?
Bottom left. There's a second card that says Voices of Africa Speaking to the Soul.
Ah, beautiful. Okay, so we'll open that one. And my apologies for pronunciation. Grace should really speak this one. Gaia Naime, ancient Andrika symbol from Ghana, meaning God is the supreme immortal one. You remember no one except God. So this is a special blessing for you, Fatima. It's very apt. And I'd like to choose one for the whole gathering. So Fatima, could you say stop again? And this one will be for everyone.
Stop.
Okay. Would you like to read this one out?
Kuntinkantan, ancient Adinkra symbol, Ghana, meaning you show great strength and character with your humility and willingness to serve.
Ah, thank you, Ashe. That's for all of us. So
Yes.
I would like very quickly, I'm going to let everyone know what are some of the events coming up shortly that you may like to participate in and also invite others. So overcoming guilt and shame, this is part of our Inner Space Brixton, and this will be on Sunday, the 31st of January, 4 to 5:30. And Samantha, who is part of our team here, will be offering that. So please do go on you can either go on Brahma Kumari's webpage, or you could take the Inner Space Brixton, Inner Space Outreach, and look at the details there. And please register. And also there is the meeting ID and passcode. And also, we have coming up again, Raja Yoga meditation course, weekday mornings, online and book-in essential. So the course will start Monday, the 1st of February, and it'll be from 10 to 11:30, and it will be every Monday for that month, the same time. And so if you go on the webpage that you can see down there, globalcooperationhouse.org, and you can register. Or if Saturday morning suits you more, that will start Saturday, the 6th of February, 10 to 11:30 for 4 Saturdays. Experience peace, inner strength, and wisdom through yoga for the mind. And again, you can register. So maybe if we can all turn on our videos and we can give a wave to everyone. It's been so wonderful to be in such an amazing gathering. And so thank you on behalf of everyone, and big love to everyone. Take care, go well, keep passing your wonderful inspirations to all. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.